enterprises or corporate enterprises, therefore, have an important role to play in the life of a country, and in South Africa, we would say in the life of our country, because that is precisely what they have played or not played in the past. When organized cabals steal from public resources and unsuspecting consumers, they break trust. They also undermine social cohesion, but in the end, they lead to what I would call destroying the lives of ordinary people. When corporate greed, and there is quite a lot of it that goes around, gives rise to price fixing, market division, and collusive tendering, governments and citizens alike, in the end, do become poorer. This is not only unfair, it is also unsustainable. But more than that, it is also immoral. It results in a disproportionate share of economic product that accrues to a narrow group of companies as well as individuals. It reduces the economic contribution of many people whose talents, energies, resources would otherwise have been gainfully employed for the greater social good. Now, anti-competitive behavior prevents economies from ever realizing their potential. One does not even need to write a thesis about this. It is something that is fairly simple and straightforward, which all of us would be aware of. And competition policy in South Africa cannot be limited to merely the promotion of market efficiency or having an introspective look at events such as mergers and acquisitions, and looking at that from a parochial point of view where all it looks at is whether there is a transformational aspect, which is economic empowerment, and that's all. It must be an instrument, this competition policy, that must effect fundamental economic and social change. From the advent of our democracy, we have argued that competition policy has what I would call a pivotal role to play in redressing the injustices of the past. This is what we stated right at the beginning, and me as part of the governing party felt that that is what we needed to do. It was to underline this imperative that in the Competition Act as it is, was crafted a preamble that said apartheid, the system that we had in the past, an iniquitous system, and other discriminatory laws and practices of the past resulted in the excessive concentration of ownership and control within the national economy. It also led to inadequate restraints against anti-competitive trade practices and unjust restrictions on full and free participation in the economy by all South Africans. And we also added that the economy must be open to greater ownership by a greater number of South Africans. Now, this we crafted because we realized that we could utilize competition policy as an instrument to effect the change that is necessary, to whittle down the concentration that was seen in the economy. The governing party realized this as early as the 60s at its various conferences whilst it was in exile. and that is when it spoke about monopolies dominating the economy of our country. And in seeking to do this, it was to say the wealth of our country must be shared amongst all South Africans. And the one way of doing so would be to open up spaces, participation, and areas so that South Africans in their totality can participate freely in their economy through owning the economy, controlling the economy, and also being key managers of economic activity in our country. And this was therefore set out as a major objective. Now, I took the trouble to look at our Competition Act, Commissioner, and found that there's a disjuncture between what is set out in the preamble and what is embodied in the actual act. And it was interesting to read an OECD report which was commenting on our competition environment. And the OECD said, we've set up lofty ideals in terms of having a competition policy that will be transformational, that will change the structure of our economy. And this, the OECD observed, was a product of the past. Product of the past in that the past system that we had, apartheid, so structured our economy that it only favored a particular racial group to be the owners, the controllers of the economy, and it did so by law, by convention, by practice, and by everything else. It is actually an anomalous type of situation, which I guess many people would say they have never seen in many parts of the world, where you make laws and say, only one racial group shall have the right to participate in this area, and you shall not trade in a particular part of the country. You will only be restricted to either the township or rural area, and so forth. Market concentration is not good for an economy. An economy that seeks to grow and to thrive and to embrace new technologies, efficiencies, and in the end also consumer satisfaction in the form of prices coming down, is an economy that can work much more better and efficiently. And having looked at the OECD report and looked at the American experience, and indeed Europe also caught up onto that. Now, this is something that a competition policy in South Africa needs to look at, to embrace what we have set out in the preamble of our Competition Act, and to mesh that into the body of the act, and make the act alive, and make the act transformational, and to respond to the needs of South Africa, because our needs possibly are much greater than the needs that Franklin Delano Roosevelt looked at. He was looking at economic growth, and so are we. We are looking at economic growth, but we are also looking at the inclusion of all our people in economic participation.